But the big story that's breaking at this moment, voting is now underway in the United States of America for one of the most polarized and hotly contested elections in decades. Over 78 million voters have already cast their early ballots. Alaska will be the last, remember, to cast votes. Philadelphia starts counting mail-in ballots, and Pennsylvania, remember, many believe is critical to who wins, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. That's the big question that now will dominate the world headlines over the next 24 hours in an election that could create a slice of history. Donald Trump hoping to become a comeback president, having lost 4 years ago, and Kamala Harris hoping to become the first woman president of the United States. So there's plenty at stake in... Okay, Rohit Sharma joining me live at the moment from Washington, D.C. Rohit, you were with us last night. The campaigning is now over in a way, and it's time for the votes. Give us a sense of what that early turnout is suggesting. Are there people coming out in large numbers, particularly women, as some reports are suggesting?
We are, Rajdeep. We are right now in one of the centers around Washington, D.C., and people are coming in. Look, it's not a holiday, so people came in droves in the early morning hours. People started lining up as early as 6:30 a.m. And right now, we'll probably see another wave of people come when it's during the lunch hour. And the third wave would be the last, which would be around evening time after 4:30 p.m. People are turning in. People are excited, Rajdeep. That's what I want to tell you. I've talked to a lot of people here. People are really excited to vote in this election. People are not sitting at home letting, other people decide their fate. And that's one interesting aspect. The other thing that I've seen, I've observed when I've talked to a lot of people not willing to talk on the camera is there seems to be an underlying sense of support for Trump. I've talked to some Indian Americans. I've talked to some African Americans. Off the record, they don't want to say on camera, but they are actually coming in and voting for Donald Trump. On the other side, when you talked about women voters, they are overwhelmingly voting for Kamala Harris. And the fact that, when you ask them, why, their answer is abortion and reproductive rights. So I think both the campaigns, we were looking at covering them for months here from America. We've stuck to those themes that abortion is going to be a very important issue. And I think if Kamala Harris wins this election tonight, it would be because those women voters. And I said it before too, Rajdeep, small counties in Pennsylvania, small counties in North Carolina, in Arizona, in Georgia. That's where this election will be decided. But at the same time, we could also be in for a big surprise. Trump could win this in a blowout if we believe, if we believe some of the pollsters who've said that there is an underlying Trump wave. And I've gotten a little bit of hint when I've talked to some people that, yes, there are African American, Indian American voters who are overwhelmingly voting for Donald Trump, Rajdeep.
When will we get the first clear trends? Presumably by 2 a.m. India time, we should start getting trends. So when by US time will you get trends? In a few hours from now?
Well, look, Rajdeep, usually on the east coast of the United States, there are 3 different time zones, East, Central, and Pacific. The 7 p.m., which would be, I think, 5:30 a.m. your time is when the polls will close. It usually takes about an hour, hour and a half when we start getting initial projections. Now, Rajdeep, a lot of networks have invested a lot of money in making those projections and prediction who's going to win. And it's dependent on the exit polls that are getting conducted across the nation right now in polling centers like this. When voters come out, all these networks are asking people who they voted for. They will simulate that data with the past election data and then make those projections. So we might get a sense of it early tomorrow morning from India's standpoint, Rajdeep. Around 6:37 a.m. your time is when we will know who's winning and who's going to be possibly a projected winner in some of the states. Now, also very important, Rajdeep, some of these swing states have different laws. I mean, in Pennsylvania, you're allowed to vote as long as you're in a queue. So even if the poll closes at 8 p.m., as long as you're in the queue, people will get to cast their vote. And those votes are tallied first. Also, I have to remind our viewers about the mail-in ballots. These mail-in ballots are across the nation have different set of rules when they come to counting. In the state of Virginia, these mail-in ballots have been tallied, which means that they do not have to count them. They just have to be able to run it and show the results of who's winning in this state. But there are other states where, you have to basically count those ballots with hands. And then there are other counties, smaller counties in America, where if the margin of error is between 500 votes, you automatically go to recounting of those votes. So if it's a close election, which has been projected over months now, we will probably see some results getting delayed, especially in those swing states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, possibly Georgia and Arizona as well.
So we could have a couple of long days ahead. America last time, if you recall, went down to the wire, particularly with states like Georgia. Took more than 48 hours before there was any kind of clarity. So this could be a very long week ahead for you, Rohit. Thanks very much for joining me there from Washington, D.C. So who is winning the race for America is the question we are asking. But I want to go first across to Geeta Mohan, who's also now joining me because she's in Florida, where Donald Trump is about to vote. Geeta, you're not too far away from where that's going to happen. Give us a sense of what Trump is up to on this big day.
Well, not far away. I'm exactly where Donald Trump is going to come. This is the Morton and Barbara Mandel Recreation Center. This is the polling booth where Donald Trump is going to come in moments from now. There are people waiting in queue just to get a glimpse of Donald Trump, maybe to shake his hands. One lady over here says that she's not going to wash her hands after shaking hands with Donald Trump. Is that so?
Yes, I will not. He's my hero. I'm Cuban. I suffer a lot under communism, and this man is standing on for the global communism movement. So I do love him. And this hand, I'll put, he stands against it. So I'll put it love and never shake it again.
Okay, she's never going to wash her hand again, is what she says. So, but that certainly is the message from here, Florida. It is a Trump bastion in many ways than one, especially West Palm Beach. And I'm sorry, Rajdeep, I've been and over here you have Rudy Giuliani, who has come to meet media people, media persons, and is addressing the media. We'll get to know what he says in moments from now, but that's Rudy Giuliani, a Trump supporter, staunch Trump supporter, and a legal advisor for Donald Trump. We again will try getting a sense of what he has to say. He will be walking up to this area as well. Helicopters, you can hear the helicopters here. Secret services are out, sniffer dogs, the security personnel, they're all here. So the area has been sanitized, and in moments from now, we'll have the former President of the United States of America walk down this very path to cast his ballot.
We'll come back to you when you get images of Donald Trump coming in to cast his ballot. Florida is where Donald Trump, of course, votes. Let's raise those big questions, though. Who is winning this race for America? What are the X factors that could prove decisive? Is this the world's most consequential election of 2024? And what does this US election mean for India? Just some of the questions we'll raise. Professor Amitabh Mattu joins me, Honorary Professor International Relations at JNU. Dhruva Jaishankar is Executive Director at the Observer Research Foundation in Washington. Michael Kugelman, Director, South Asia Institute at the Wilson Center, is with us. Clifford Young is President Ipsos Public Affairs. They do polling in the United States. And Venu Rajamoni is former Indian diplomat. I appreciate all of you joining us. I want to get a pollster's perspective right at the very top first. Clifford Young, give us a sense of what the polls are saying, because it seems purely from the outside right till the very end, the polls seem to be playing safe, barring a couple of outliers that mostly then predict Trump winning. Most of the other recognized polls seem to say too close to call. Is it too close to call?
Yeah, it's neck and neck. A year's worth of campaigning, a year's worth of rhetoric, a year's worth of politics, and we're 50-50, whether it's at the national level or in the key swing states. That's what the polls say. And ultimately, the election might just be decided by the last few days of getting the vote out. The Harris side really pushing the abortion issue, the Trump side really pushing the immigration issue. The side that can get their side out is more likely to be the victor. But right now, the polls are neck and neck.
You're saying neck and neck, and you're saying it depends on turnout, but any indications from these early mail polls or postal ballots that we could get, or you believe that it's simply impossible to predict at this stage?
Early voting before Election Day, that has not been a very good indicator of what actually happens ultimately. I'd be very careful at that. By our own polling at Ipsos, we think the turnout will be lower than 2020, but higher than 2016, excuse me. Who that advantage is, that's very unclear. And we're really going to have to wait and see.
Okay, Dhruva Jaishankar, you're joining us there from Washington. Your sense there from your vantage point, is it, as was just suggested, too close to call? There's the whole campaign for immigration that Trump has launched, the anti-immigrant rhetoric, and the abortion rights issues of Kamala Harris. Is it too close to call, you sense?
So, polling is, as you know well, including in India, is an inexact science because it's predicting in some ways what people's intentions are, future intentions are. And there's also a weighting of samples that pollsters do. One of the lessons they've drawn from the past few elections is that their weightage was often underplaying Trump supporters for a variety of reasons, and there's some sense a lot of the polls have now corrected that. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the things that will remain to be seen, I think two things. How much has that polling error been addressed to some degree? Has there been an overcorrection, which is what some Democrats believe, mm-hmm. or is Trump support still undercounted? The second is actually just voter turnout, who actually shows up on the day, and that really is a question of enthusiasm amongst the bases of Trump and Harris supporters and of Republicans and Democrats. Again, the people are using proxies for that, the early voting levels, and how much the attendance at rallies. To basically as proxies for how much enthusiasm there is, and there are mixed messages in all of that. So all of these uncertainties make it very difficult to predict at this point of time. One thing to look forward to, we may not have a result in the next 24 hours, but one thing to look forward to in the next 24 hours is how much enthusiasm has there been, particularly amongst women voters on the question of reproductive rights, mm-hmm. and on the question of immigration as well.
Interesting. Let me just bring in some of those X factors and then go and look at what it means for India and why this election is so consequential. Just some of the X factors. The gender gap, the surge of support for Kamala Harris among women. Will that sustain on this voting day? The other big X factor is America ready really for a female president. So will the gender gap, if anything, also work against her? There is that fear of rising immigration. That's been a consistent theme right through the Trump campaign. The fear that a Kamala Harris presidency would lead to open borders. There's the economy and price rise, and many believe it's the economy is stupid, especially inflation. That could become a critical issue. And also, as we just said, who is able to get their maximum supporters to the polling booth? So all these factors will play in the wind, but Michael Kugelman, from your vantage point in Washington, what are you looking at in terms of a Trump presidency versus Harris presidency? Give us, from an Indian perspective, what should we in India be looking out for, a critical difference between the two?
Well, I mean, as we all know, these are two very different figures. We can agree that, in a broad sense, no matter who wins the election, the U.S.-India relationship will be in a good place. I mean, we know there's strong bipartisan support for partnership, and if you look at how the relationship has exponentially deepened over the last few decades, that's happened with multiple Republican and Democratic administrations in power, including, of course, the Trump presidency. But again, these are two leaders with two different approaches. I think that we could see, depending on the outcome, some old tension points in the relationship resurge, such as the issue of trade. We know that what little Trump has said about India on the campaign trail, much of it is focused on the issue of tariffs. I think that on the flip side, if Trump were to return, we might see an administration that would be a bit less present, so to speak, in terms of giving public voice to concerns about internal issues in India, including issues related to transnational repression. But if you look at their different foreign policies, the Russia factor, I think, has become a bit of a minefield in the U.S.-India relationship. If Trump's views on Russia continue to be as restrained as they appear to have been relative to both Harris and Biden,
Okay, we're having a bit
that
of
the Russia issue could become less of a minefield in the U.S.-India relationship.
Okay, we're having a bit of a problem with the audio, but Professor Mattu, your sense, why is this being seen as one of the most consequential elections in recent times?
Rajdeep, because this election in some ways represents two different visions of America and of American presence in the world. On the one hand, you have a Trump vision, which is a relatively isolationist vision, which doesn't believe in America taking responsibility for the security and stability of the world. It wants allies to pay for their own defense. European allies, Japan, doesn't want free riders, wants America to be great again in a sense that it wants manufacturing to return to America and not really engage with other people's conflicts or wars. Domestically, Trump represents the most divisive, toxic agenda that of any presidential candidate, while Kamala Harris is more of the same in a much more credible way as Biden had articulated. If you ask me, my gut feeling is that I think America is not ready for Trump too. It's ready for Kamala Harris.
You're saying something huge there. You're telling me today, you think America is not ready for Trump too. America is ready for Kamala, a colored woman. Am I correct?
Absolutely. I think the toxicity of Trump, particularly in the last few days, particularly during the racist slurs in Madison Garden, the obscene gestures with the microphone not working, has just brought home to the average American that no matter what Trump represents in terms of the old American dream, in terms of family values, in terms of making people work harder, getting them jobs, and giving them a vision of what America was like in the last century or the beginning of most of the 1950s and 60s. The fact is that is all really overwhelmed by the fact that Trump is himself unpredictable, mercurial in the euphemistic sense, and dangerous. He's playing out of a playbook which Joe McCarthy's lawyer and then Trump's lawyer, Roy Cohen, laid out for him, which is speak lies, create a bullyish attitude by trying to drown out all opposition, and that'll help you win. Most of the time that he has succeeded. But my sense is, especially given the current polling, final polling, where Kamala Harris has seen a surge, that he is unlikely to win Pennsylvania. Kamala Devi Harris, to get her name right, will be the president of the United States, even if it's declared 90 hours from now.
You know, you're saying Kamala Devi Harris, and that in itself, Venu Rajamani suggests there is this India connection. But as some of our reporters have been suggesting, Indian Americans in large numbers continue to support Trump. Do you believe that there is a clear distinction to be drawn at this moment between a Trump presidency and a Harris presidency? Or is there simply bipartisan consensus which shouldn't make all that much of a difference?
I think when it comes to India-US relations, as already mentioned by the previous speakers, the foundation is very strong. We have seen steady progress. We have seen a lot of major achievements. None of that are going to go away irrespective of who becomes the president. But certainly Trump and Kamala Harris are very different people. We will both have good points as far as India is concerned. Both will also have areas where we strongly disagree, and there are many irritants. But more important, I would say, is what Amitabh Mattu has been just talking about. We should first think in terms of who is good for the US, who is good for the world. There it is absolutely clear. If the kind of toxicity which Donald Trump represents wins, it is going to have an impact across the world. It could even have an impact in India. So
let's be clear. How would toxicity of Trump when he targets Puerto Ricans, when he targets immigrants, have an impact on India?
Because it is essentially a fight against pluralism. it is against, it is an opposition of anything foreign. This is where all xenophobia originates. This is where racism originates. This is where all these lot of lies which are spread about immigrants going and killing and eating cats and dogs. This is how the right wing feeds on its own rhetoric. We have seen it. This is not an American phenomenon alone. It is also happening in Europe. And this anti-immigrant sentiment can come back to bite both Indian immigrants abroad, can also spread to other countries. So a country like India, which is essentially pluralistic, whose biggest strength is our diversity, has to stand up for pluralism everywhere in the world. And I think Kamala Harris stands up for that much more than Donald Trump.
Dhruva Jaishankar, is that true that Indians in America are seeing this through the prism of pluralism, or is there any truth to these reports that suggest that Indian Americans are largely supporting a Trump presidency?
So the honest answer is we don't know, we'll see. But I think two things to look at in terms of the Indian American vote. So one is historically, Indian Americans, about 2/3, between 65 and 70% of Indian Americans tend to be registered Democrats who vote reliably Democratic. About 25% tend to be Republican and vote Republican. Overall, compared to other ethnic groups, that suggests that Indian Americans are actually amongst the most democratic-leaning traditionally of ethnic groups in the U.S. And I think, while there are a lot of, and perhaps growing number of Trump and Republican supporters, they still represent a minority. Now, the other thing to look at is just a couple of recent surveys that have been done, including one by the Carnegie Endowment, on Indian American voting patterns. And they suggest that there is a slight increase, particularly amongst younger men, towards the Republican Party. And there's also some differences amongst first generation versus second generation Indian Americans and how they're going to vote. We'll see how much of that trend is there. Again, anecdotally, there's some suggestion that Trump is able to appeal to some of these Indian American voters, and they may vote for the first time for the Republican ticket.
Why would young Indian American voters choose Trump? What is it about Trump that would make it so attractive for them?
Again, we can speculate on some of the reasons. Some that have been anecdotally cited are on economic issues. They tend to be, want lower taxes. They want, for some of them, it's immigration. They believe that they've immigrated legally, but the Democrats are too soft on illegal or undocumented migrants. So again, we can speculate on some of the reasons. There's a little bit of polling data to suggest it, but not enough to reach firm conclusions.
Let me take what you just said to Clifford Young, because he does polling. Clifford, is there any truth to these reports that younger Indian Americans or the second generation tend to slightly sway towards Republicans compared to first generation who were overwhelmingly Democrats?
Yeah, well, we don't have data specifically on Indians, but if you look at second generation in general, especially Latinos, which is the largest non-white segment in the United States, there is a slight trend towards being a bit more conservative, a bit more Republican. Issues of the pocketbook, economic issues, and inflation are especially important. We have to emphasize that the whole reason that Trump is stronger this electoral cycle and the Democrats are a bit weaker is because of inflation, and those voters on the margins that typically might sway Democrat have been tilting more Republican. So second generation tends to be a little bit more conservative. Pocketbook issues are important, and they're especially important this electoral cycle because of the inflation issue.
You mentioned inflation because Amitabh Mattu, if you go across the world, most incumbents this year have suffered setbacks. Even the BJP government here lost seats in 2024. The British government was wiped out of office. The Conservatives were out of office. There's a sense that this could be the year where every incumbent, and in this case the Biden-Harris presidency, you could argue, faces challenges. You're the one outlier who's gone on a limb and said you don't expect a Trump 2.0, but the world might well suggest this could be Trump as the new anti-establishment figure in a way.
I mean, obviously, as I said, the pollsters still think it's a dead heat. But in terms of the economy as well, the American economy is surprisingly doing remarkably well. And inflation figures are often exaggerated. The poor state of the economy is often exaggerated by Trump and his supporters. And in terms of bilateral relations, there are two reasons why I think Trump would be bad for India. One, You have still a large number of people from Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Punjab, Gujarat going on, just to name a few states anecdotally, who go on H-1B visas. He's going to come hard on H-1B visas. So Indian professionals who see America as a land of opportunity, that will start trickling down. Secondly, in terms of trade, he has said that he is going to probably put a 20% tariff on Indian exports into America, which means that the net impact, as someone's worked out, it could be as much as 0.03% of India's GDP could come down because of the tariffs that Trump would lay down. What is the pro? What is the good side? Trump is not really worried about what you do within the country. He's not, as much as the Democrats, going to be interfering on human rights issues, on issues like non-proliferation. But he is unpredictable. You never know what Trump will do the next day. The fact that 90% of his previous administration, anyone who served in his cabinet or with him as a vice president or otherwise in the armed forces, has no confidence in him, should reveal how much faith people have in him who have worked with him.
Yeah, but he does, in his last days, Michael, in the last few days, his campaign has been, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Just to get a sense from you, Michael, in terms of foreign policy, do Americans believe they're in a better place today than they were 4 years ago? Are they in a worse place today than they were 4 years ago?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say without proper polling data, but I think that many Americans recognize that foreign policy and foreign affairs have become an issue in this election and could well have an impact on it, particularly the Israel-Gaza war, and the fact that you have some key voting constituencies, Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, that have been very unhappy about the Biden administration's policies, to the point that many experts are saying that a swing state like Michigan could the outcome there could be impacted by considerations about U.S. foreign policy. But typically U.S. elections, like elections in many countries, are decided by bread and butter issues, economic issues, other domestic issues. What is notable about this year's election is that I do think that foreign policy considerations will have some type of impact, not a dominant impact, but an impact nonetheless.
Venu Rajamani, in conclusion, you suggested interestingly that this election is about diversity versus this notion of America first that Trump puts up. Do you believe that diversity can triumph? There's a fear that Kamala Harris has moved so far. I mean, her critics suggest that she has moved so far down left that she's lost that centrist space, and that's the one that Trump hopes to capture in the next 24 hours.
Well, she originally comes from the left, and she has been trying to position herself more in the center in order to win the elections. We see what is happening. In fact, what is happening in Gaza, her position there, which is still very pro-Israel, is a typical reflection of the fact that she has moved from her original base. But ultimately in politics, in US politics, which is the most important, the oldest democracy in the world, the most powerful nation in the world, it is important that decency triumphs. It is important that rules triumph or ethics triumph. And in all these aspects, Trump is such a failure that if he were to win, it is a colossal tragedy for democracies across the world, not just for the US. And as I said, it sets a trend for many more things to happen. If Trump starts a witch hunt, if Trump starts undermining constitutional institutions, which he already did during his previous term, even when he loses and if he challenges the elections, all this portends very badly for democracies across the world, for the liberal order. And if his effort to spew hatred, to build on this rhetoric over immigration, to create the fear of migrants as the main winning plank for himself. Added to that is also a certain amount of Islamophobia, which again has been seen in his previous terms. I think this is a very sad day.
Okay, so we'll wait. Those are all reasons to look forward to what America decides. Which direction does America go in this critical election at the end of this big election year of 2024? To all my guests, I look forward to listening to your views once the results are out in about 24 to 48 hours, or who knows, in America, it could take as long as 90. Thank you all very much for joining me here on the show tonight. We spoke about pluralism, diversity, use of religion in politics. Well, that happens in India all the time, and it's happening at the moment in battleground Jharkhand. Yogi Adityanath, Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister, today reiterating his call, batenge to katenge. If you get divided, you will lose out, triggering a political showdown. The Congress Samajwadi Party accusing the BJP of spreading a divisive agenda. This comes a day after the Prime Minister had also raised the issue of infiltrators and suggesting that they would take away your daughters, all of which has led to angry remarks from the other side. Listening to both sides.
ये जाति के नाम पर बांटने वाले लोग वही हैं जो लोग आपके नाम पर आपको जाति के नाम पर बांटेंगे, क्षेत्र के नाम पर बांटेंगे, भाषा के नाम पर बांटेंगे, और जब आपके ऊपर संकट आएगा ये कोई आपके सामने नहीं खड़ा होगा, कोई भी आपके साथ खड़ा नहीं होगा। इस देश का इतिहास गवाह है, जब भी जाति के नाम पर, क्षेत्र के नाम पर, भाषा के नाम पर बंटे हैं तो निर्ममता से कटे भी हैं।
बटेंगे तो कटेंगे, किसको बोला? बांटने वाले ही तुम हो और काटने वाले भी तुम हो, और दूसरों को बोल रहे बटेंगे तो कटेंगे। हुकूमत तुम्हारे पास, पैसा तुम्हारे पास, बुद्धि तुम्हारे पास, गरीबों को क्या दिया? इनको गुलाम रखने का तुम्हारा इरादा है।
जब घुसपैठ का मामला कोर्ट में जाए और प्रशासन इससे इनकार करे तो पता चलता है कि सरकारी तंत्र में ही घुसपैठ हो चुकी है। ये आपकी रोटी भी छीन रहे हैं, ये आपकी बेटी भी छीन रहे हैं,
और यहां आकर भाषण दे रहे, माटी, रोटी, बेटी, इनकी हिफाजत करना है। इनको आज लोग ढकलते ढकलते अंदर आ रहे हैं, फिर तुम क्या काम कर रहे हो? अरे तुम देश के प्रधानमंत्री हो, होम मिनिस्टर हो, डिफेंस मिनिस्टर तुम्हारे पास हो, वो ढकलते ढकलते अंदर आए कैसा?
Let's raise the big questions then at the moment. Divide and rule politics in Jharkhand, tribals being pitted against outsiders, so-called infiltrators, or is it a dog whistle for minorities? Polarization politics in Jharkhand, use of religion now part of political playbook. Joining me on my face-off, Sanju Verma, National Spokesperson BJP, and Mahima Singh, National Spokesperson Congress. You first, Sanju Verma. How do you respond to those who are saying this is now back to classic politics of using religion to divide and rule ahead of an election? You speak about infiltrators, you speak about snatching away daughters. Earlier it was Mangal Sutra. All of this is dog whistle for Muslims and minorities.
You know, Rajdeep, let's get a couple of things very clear. First and foremost, Jharkhand is a pretty young state which was carved out of the southern part of Bihar only as recently as the year 2000. But modern day Bihar as we know it came into existence in 1950. So I will just give you some startling data which corroborates Prime Minister Modi's and Amit Shah, our Home Minister's stance that batenge to katenge, united we stand, divided we fall. You will be surprised to know that in 1951, the tribal population of undivided Bihar, which includes Jharkhand as well, was 46.8%. And come 2011, and this is not Sanju Verma throwing numbers off her hat, these numbers are publicly documented. Come 2011, the tribal population fell from 46.8 to 28.11%. And do you know something more interesting? The Muslim population in 1951 in undivided Bihar was only 9.44%. And what is the Muslim population as per 2011 census now? It is 22.73% in Jharkhand. And the most important part, this is something which your audience needs to know. The biggest community in terms of, the tribal community, which has a stake in Jharkhand, is the Santhal community. Santhalis accounted for 44.67% of Jharkhand's undivided Bihar's tribal population in 1950. That number today stands whittled down to 27.1%. And has this growth in tribal population, the degrowth, in tribal population and the growth in Muslim population, has it all been organic? No. The inorganic growth in Muslim population has happened on account of Ghuspetiyas. Now, when I call them Bangladeshi illegal migrants, when I call them infiltrators, it sounds very nice and, very kosher. But when I use the term Ghuspetiya, people get rattled. Franklin Roosevelt said, united we stand, divided we fall. Abraham Lincoln said, united we stand, divided we fall. King James version of the Bible says that, united we stand, divided we fall. But जब अंग्रेजी में कहा जाता है, हम तालियां बजाते हैं. When Amit Shah और Prime Minister Modi और योगी आदित्यनाथ उसी चीज को, शुद्ध हिंदी में कहते हैं, कटेंगे तो बटेंगे, बटेंगे तो कटेंगे, एक रहेंगे तो सेफ रहेंगे. The entire ecosystem of political pundits and the left liberal votes suddenly
I've listened to you patiently.
I don't understand why.
Okay, I've listened to you patiently, but let me
Can
bring
I finish in just 30
No,
seconds?
ma'am, no. You've had your full. I have limited time. Mahima Singh, you want to respond? According to the BJP, they are looking at the demographic shifts in Jharkhand and reflecting those demographic shifts in their slogans. Your response?
Jai Hind. In fact, the BJP spokesperson's propaganda-ridden statement on your show, Rajdeep, reflects, rather testifies Mark Twain's words that while the truth is tying its laces, lie goes halfway around the world. So it is BJP's ideal crook book at play when the Home Minister, the Prime Minister, the CM of Assam, all of them, a host of ministers, go to the state of Jharkhand, which is landlocked by states that are governed by the BJP itself, and go and allege infiltration. It is rather the mockery of the worst kind with the people of Jharkhand, tribals mostly, who the BJP refuses to address as Adivasis, rather addresses as Vanvasis. When you ask the BJP about the data on Adivasis, the BJP spokesperson just gave you so much data. It would be kind of her to also give us data on infiltrators. Because whenever that is sought for, the BJP always, throws conundrums. It goes around, beats around the bush. No data available, government. When you talk about when Himanta Biswa Sarma talks about हमें मुल्लों की ज़रूरत नहीं है, we must ask them. Then how come are they standing with the TDP in Andhra Pradesh that guarantees 4% reservation for Muslims in the state? You see, we also must ask the BJP, they talk about Bangladeshis and Bangladesh. This is the government that had no intel whatsoever on the Bangladesh unrest and put our government, put our country in a state of jeopardy when we had to give an emergency landing to Sheikh Hasina in our country. We must also ask this government that why does the BJP hold the legacy, whether it is Babulal Marandi or Arjun Munda or then Raghuvar Das, why does the BJP hold the legacy of predominantly giving the stronghold in the richest mineral zone of the world, that is Jharkhand, to the corporates, a 600 megawatt power station set up by Adani in the state of Jharkhand, out of which the entire power, supply is given to Bangladesh. And there we come to
ma'am, let her finish.
Why do you get the BJP?
No, let her finish, ma'am.
Okay,
ma'am, no, just a minute, Mahima Singh now. Okay, no, 1 minute. Nothing is wrong with me. You have to be a little bit more patient and listen to other voices other than your own. But let me ask you a simple thing, Sanju Verma. You cited demographic shifts in Jharkhand. The fact also is, every time you use that word Ghuspetiya, the government at the center is yours. The border security forces and those who have to be vigilant on the borders to ensure what you say is illegal immigration is your responsibility. You pin it on the state government and say state government is encouraging Ghuspetiyas. The truth of the matter is, if there are Ghuspetiyas, the center has a responsibility to stop illegal immigration. Why is it only at elections that you suddenly remember Ghuspetiyas?
I will answer your long-winded question, and yes, I'm in love with my voice, but I don't pretend to be who I'm not. You pretend to be neutral and you defy your own neutrality by always acting biased on national television.
Why?
And you don't even
I've given the same time to you and her, ma'am. I gave her the same time. You must learn the art of listening to others than your own. But please go ahead.
Can I please finish?
Please go ahead.
I don't need to listen to anybody and learn how to debate because I want my time to say what my party stand is. Okay. It's as simple as that. Now let me tell you the hard truth without getting lectures from anybody. The most important point is this. India has a border of 4,096.7 kilometers with Bangladesh. 60% of that border is porous because of socio-economic and legacy and historical reasons. For the longest time, the Congress was in power. It did not even deem fit to adhere to or honor the land border agreement which we had with successive Bangladeshi governments. Point number one, वो काम भी भाजपा को करना पड़ा, मोदी जी को करना पड़ा after coming to power in 2014. Point number two, यहाँ बैठकर आदिवासियों पर गुणगान करते हैं. The budget of Jharkhand was not even 1 lakh crore when it comes to the tribal/Adivasi community. And do you know something? In the last 7 years of Modi government alone, the center has allocated 3.89 lakh crore for the benefit of Adivasis alone. Point number three and the most important thing, ये जो मिस्टर खड़गे कहते हैं कि सरकार इनकी, बुद्धि इनकी, तंत्र इनका, फिर ऐसा क्यों नहीं कर पा रहे, वैसा क्यों नहीं कर पा रहे, I will tell Mr. Khadge, the fact that today Narendra Modi is in power, that is the reason that on Rajdeep Sardesai's show, we can talk about things like demographic jihad, population jihad, food jihad, thuk jihad. 10 साल पहले तक तो हिंदू फेविकॉल लगाकर घूमा करते थे. Today I can proudly say, Jai Shri Ram, बटेंगे तो कटेंगे, because I know I am right and I.
And you don't think batenge, okay, you don't think batenge to katenge, you don't think batenge, no, ma'am, you must listen to, you don't think batenge to katenge is a dog whistle directed at a community,
yes,
am I correct?
Come to that.
No, please answer that in 20 seconds. Answer that in 20 seconds.
Yes, don't eat into my time. Batenge to katenge simply means united we stand, divided we fall. I will just end by saying one thing. Do you remember University of Texas, September 8, 2024? Rahul Gandhi said India is not a nation but a linguistic entity at war with itself. And on September 10th, 2024 at Virginia, Rahul Gandhi said Sikhs are not allowed to wear a kada, Sikhs are not allowed to wear a turban, and Sikhs are not allowed to visit a Gurudwara. That is called being divisive. That is called dog whistling, and that too on foreign shores.
Your time is up. Your time is up, ma'am. I've listened to you. I've given you time. Mahima Singh, your response to what you're hearing, that according to the BJP, batenge to katenge means united we stand strong, else divided we fall.
This is the kind of bleeding desperation that one sees when, in spite of, you see, arresting a sitting chief minister, in spite of preponing the elections, the BJP can sense a defeat, an imminent defeat. And when she speaks, I believe that, you know, the people of Jharkhand and the people of India must be wondering, you see, what is the BJP talking about? Do they even have a bit of a clue what they're talking about? You see, Jharkhand is landlocked by Bihar, Bangladesh, and Odisha. All three states, either you see governed by the BJP or their, alliance partners, except for West Bengal. So the BJP has no data available. It has no intel available. In Godda, which is the heart of Santhal Pargana, the BJP has allowed Adani to set up a 1600 megawatt power station. All of whose power is being supplied to Bangladesh.
Okay, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it there before it gets more noisy. Clearly, there are two different perspectives of what batenge to katenge clearly means. The BJP is claiming it is inclusive and unifying. The opposition is clear. These are communal dog whistles that the government unleashes to divide vote bank and play vote bank politics of their own before an election. But two clear views. Sanju Verma, Mahima Singh, appreciate both of you joining me on My Face Off. To tonight's good news story, where a teacher in Bengal has taken the initiative to revive Alpana, the practice of drawing designs outside homes. Ratnabali Ghosh had become a hit on internet for her designs during the Diwali and Pujo festivities in Kolkata. Take a look.
Ratnabali Ghosh is on a mission to revive Alpana. The traditional art involves drawing designs using rice, kernel and colors in front of an idol in courtyards or outside the entrance of buildings. But it is fast getting forgotten.
Stickers are very beautiful, but on the other hand, the traditional art is getting lost. So I was horrified. So when Mudar said, let's do it all over the city, I was all for it. I said, yes, absolutely. So I think we succeeded to a great extent because now young people are doing Alpana.
Recently, Ratnabali caught the attention of the city with her unique act of spreading joy.
We went to a building which was 10 floors. So मैं हर फ्लोर पे मैं अल्पना किया. सुबह जब उन लोग दरवाजा खोला तो देखा, and their responses were excellent.
Inspired by the response, she expanded her canvas during Diwali and Kali Puja.
So we said, if we can do this in one building, why not all over the city? So we did 20 houses in North Calcutta and 20 in South Calcutta.
Thanks to the efforts of Ratnabali, Alpana is getting a new lease of life. With Anirban Sinha Roy, Bureau Report, India Today.
Let's leave you with a not so nice image though tonight. Remember, Chhath Puja starts tomorrow, and while we wish everyone a happy Chhath Puja, there is an annual reminder also on the state of the Yamuna ahead of Chhath Puja in the national capital. The holy river is covered in thick white foam. The alarming toxicity level of the water sparking concerns over well-being of devotees who will take a dip in the Yamuna over the next few days. The war of words can continue between the centre and AAP on who is responsible for cleaning the river. At the end of the day, those are the images that should trouble both government in Delhi and at the centre. Is this what the great river Yamuna is reduced to? Think about it. Stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubhratri. Jai Hind, Namaskar.